Lakeland Public Television's Common Ground is brought to you by the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund.
I have a whole lot of Rosemauling books that I look at, just for inspiration and for colors and ideas and things. One thing about the Rosemauling is that it has a lot more room for the creativity and the originality of design. I have tons of designs that I've done over the last years, and I like to go through those because I will find forms that I can incorporate into a design, or revise it a little bit, So this is partly my inspiration too. And I thought I'd try something I never had tried before, which is a 3-part design rather than a 4-part or a 6-part or an 8-part. I did my design in this segment here and then just folded it right through the center, traced it over here, and then did the same thing on the 3rd segment. I will be putting that into this bowl after I put the chalk on the back, but it's so hard to paint on bowls because of the angles and getting the design in there that I wanted to show you how to paint on something flat. The different styles depended on the different valleys where painters lived in Norway. And because each of the valleys was quite isolated, because of the mountains, there were areas where this Rogaland style that I'm doing today was most usual, and they would show other people in their area, where across the mountain there might be, closer to Oslo or something, there would be the telemark style, which would be a lot freer, usually different colors, and then at one time there were Rosemalers who traveled and earned their place to stay and food in exchange for Rosemauling. So in the olden days, the farmers would keep their wooden things or be making wooden things, and they'd have things ready. So when the Rosemauler came through, they had something for the Rosemauler to do. What I'm trying to do here is to get paint that will be a little bit more like cream, thick cream, so that it will come off from the brush just right. In 1976, we had moved to a farm in north of Deer River. The only catch was we didn't have any money coming in. So my aunt had died, and my mother gave me her paints and brushes and some folios of old Rosemauling that my aunt and uncle had gotten in Norway. And I just remembered how my aunt loved painting, so I thought, well, I'm going to try this. And so I got the one book I could find and did some practicing. I painted on everything I could find around there. It looked pretty primitive, but it was okay. And I didn't know what Rosemauling was because there just wasn't that much information about it. But it fit my Norwegian background. It was a way for me to carry on the part of the family that way. And so there was a bicentennial, or whatever it's called, celebration in Grand Rapids, and a friend was on the committee. They were having an arts and crafts fair, and she said, well, why don't you bring your Rosemauling? I typed up some information and so I could let people know what Rosemauling was, and I went to that first art fair. I'd had a few things painted, and I sold them. So what I'm going to do is load up half of my brush with my middle red. I will load the other side of it in the really bright red. That'll be my inside color, the inside of the scrolls. And thank God for newspapers. This is really a good place for me to squiggle my colors to mix them, because I want to do a little mixing on the brush. And if I just keep stroking it this way and move it one way or the other just a little bit, it blends nicely. Part of these strokes depends on the brush pressure and the angle of the brush. As I pull it up here, I increase the pressure just a little bit. As I come up here, I'm going to turn the brush and then lift it off. The original rosemauling was very bright, and over time, as it got passed down, it was naturally got a little darker. The rosemauling is really challenging as far as the strokes. One thing about these scroll strokes, we don't want to have any sharp corners on them like I had on this one here, so I'm just gonna fix it. See where I messed up here? And I can unpaint things when I need to. This is where I just barely touch the plate because I want to keep that really fine point. Some of these coily strokes, it's like dancing with the brush. This is one of those flowers where I'm not going to work with my paint thinned down. I'm going to put them on more separately. This is called the apron of the flower, usually. I'm going to go ahead and put the middle part of the flower on, and then I'm going to edge it with this raw umber. You don't want to have any one color stand out too much. Green seems to be one of those colors that needs to be really toned down a lot because it just can overtake a design if it isn't. I used to worry so much when I first started doing it because there seemed to be all these rules, you know, about what you could do and what you shouldn't do and what you never do, and I was just so concerned about that. But one time I saw a rosemauler who was doing stuff with purple and pink, and all the books that I had read said you never use those colors, and I liked those colors, and I thought, well, I think they didn't use them because they used to have to mix their own colors from the dirt that they had around or whatever, and they just never had that color dirt, maybe. It's my own theory. Go back and shade that some more. It won't be that. It won't stay that dark there. It was important to me growing up Norwegian. The area where my grandpa and grandma's place was and where my folks settled in again finally there too. It was such a good support system. All the aunts and uncles and cousins, that was our social life. You know, we'd go to church and everybody'd stand out on the lawn all the time, and they were all, that was our visiting time, you know. And when we visited people, and we did, we'd go visit the cousins and we'd trade cousins in the summertime. One cousin would come and stay for a couple of weeks, and we'd do, you know, we'd just play. And it was something that a lot of families, I think, don't have anymore. You know, they don't have that. There's something special about family, you know, and a lot of people with the whole mobile society and everything, it's just, some things have just gotten left behind, I guess. I'm going to put some black ones on here. But anyway, I guess the rosemauling is one way for me to show that I am Norwegian. I'm proud of it. And when I'm painting it, it just reminds me so much of the whole connection with family. And there.
If you enjoyed this segment of Lakeland Public Television's Common Ground, consider making a contribution at lptv.org. If you have segment ideas pertaining to North Central Minnesota, contact us at legacy@lptv.org. Common Ground is funded by the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund by the vote of the people on November 4th, 2008.